Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Malik here with the Hurricane Season 2020 update, part of the Hurricane Outlook in the session for July 23rd, 2020, recorded on 8:36 a.m. Eastern Time. This is the first of two updates today, so we are definitely have a lot to talk about today, so buckle up, get your favorite snack or whatever, and let's kind of begin. So in the eastern and central Pacific basins, we have Hurricane Douglas, which has strengthened into a Category 3 major hurricane. This is expected to continue intensifying just slightly, with maximum sustained winds expected to get up to 125 miles per hour, and this is expected to get quite close to Hawaii as a hurricane. Now, the Hawaiian Islands have had some hurricane threats over the last several years, none of which really materialized. This one could go directly right over the Big Island here, and this would certainly be of significant concern, especially on the front-facing side there. On the upslope side, basically, we're really going to have to watch for this over the next few days or so. Again, this is basically expected to track right over the Big Island and some of the islands there. This could bring heavy rain, some storm surge, gusty winds, flooding. That whole 9 yards is expected for portions of Hawaii over the next few days or so. Now, no watches or warnings have been issued at this time, but we really have to watch this over the next few days. So for residents and visitors in Hawaii, make sure to stay tuned to the Central Pacific Hurricane Center and your local National Weather Service forecast office for the latest information. If we take a look here on the IR satellite, we have a fairly well-defined clear eye right now with deep convective bursts rotating around the center, and we are now kind of seeing this level out in intensity, and the reason why is because this is going to be approaching cooler waters out here. So intensity-wise, this is not expected to strengthen much more, but is expected to remain a hurricane at least for the next 36 hours before finally kind of really ramping down closer to the Hawaiian Islands as it moves about. Fairly well developed eye with a central dense overcast, and this will be heading close to Hawaii over the next several days. So for residents and visitors, make sure to pay attention to your local weather forecasts for the next several days there. Closer to home here, we have newly formed Tropical Depression 8, which did form last night at the 11 o'clock advisory package from the National Hurricane Center. Maximum sustained winds of 30 miles per hour with a pressure of about 1,007 millibars. This is expected to become Tropical Storm Hannah over the next several days or so, probably within about tomorrow. This is expected to become a tropical storm, and tropical storm watches have been issued for most of the Texas coastline from Houston all the way down to near. And this is expected to roll into the Texas coastline here. As it does so, it is going to be slowing down. So we really have to watch this. This is going to be slowing down on approach into Texas. And this could bring some very heavy rainfall and flooding and maybe even some storm surge to that area. In the IR satellite presentation this morning from tropicaltidbits.com, fairly well organized, although we do have a lot of these popcorn thunderstorms. Basically, these are not your self-sustaining thunderstorms that are well developed like you see over here with Hurricane Douglas. It's not as sustained as that. And if we take a look here at the visible satellite from College of DuPage, the COD Meteorology website, you notice as the sun rises here, we have a fairly wide effect here. All these bands that are kind of rotating around all the way well to the east of the system. So portions over towards Louisiana and even the Florida Panhandle is going to certainly see some effects with rainfall from the system, as this will generally be kind of rotating around in a spiral effect like that. And you can kind of see that going out like that. And then we also have our more undeveloped area right here that is really trying to get fairly well established today. Again, you notice a lot of showers and thunderstorms in this region, but none of it's really consolidating around a general axis at this point. If you take a look here at the Gfs model, this is for Tropical Depression 8. This is basically by 15Z this afternoon. That is 12Z, so about 7 o'clock. That's now 15Z. Again, we have a fairly unestablished area of low pressure, a fairly broad area of low pressure, some dry air off towards the west of the system. That's not really going to be a problem as it is with Tropical Storm Gonzalo. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But over the next 27 hours or so, as it approaches, this is the the Louisiana and Texas coastlines right here. A fairly unenveloped area, only a pressure of about 1,010 millibars, but look what starts to happen. It starts to slow down on approach. This is 15Z Friday. We have a fairly moist bubble as this now starts to come in and slows down out here across the open Gulf waters, where water temperatures are fairly warm currently. And you can see out here then by 42 hours and then subsequently within the next 2 days, a pressure of about 1,000 millibars. So as it now starts to slow down, this is by 6Z Saturday or about 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, this is now starting to become a fairly well enveloped area. We have a nice concentration of that relative humidity. Now there is still some drier air being pulled off of the continent or the continental United States and coming off of Texas that may try to get enveloped into the circulation a little bit. But what you notice is that this starts to slow down fairly significantly, and by 15Z Saturday, look, 992 millibars on the H-Wharf model, becoming close to hurricane strength as it approaches the Texas coastline because of the slowing down. And if this does happen, this will be a fairly significant change in what we're seeing. Again, the official intensity from the National Hurricane Center is only calling for 45 miles per hour within the next 60 hours or so as it approaches the Texas coastline. But you notice how this is going to be starting to slow down over the next several days. This could be a fairly significant rainfall event, at least right near where this makes landfall, and upwards of about 6 inches or so of rain is certainly possible by the time we get into Saturday and Sunday. Now, conversely, on the HMON model, this is the old Gfdl hurricane model. Again, if we move that out to 24 hours, the HMON is a lot stronger within the 24-hour time frame, 997 millibars, a fairly well-enveloped area of moisture pocket right here with no shear, basically, warm ocean temperatures with high upper ocean heat content, allowing this to significantly strengthen, and then by 42 hours, 985 millibars on the HMON. Now, one of the problems is that this could be a convective feedback problem, because 985 millibars in 42 hours, that is significant rapid intensification, which we don't really see becoming a significant concern, but the models are indicating a uptick in the winds right before landfall. So this is a distinct possibility that certainly heavy rainfall is going to be a problem. And if you take a look here, this is the Gfs Forecast Model, the 850 millibar vorticity, the spin in the atmosphere about 5,000 feet off the ground. And we kind of roll that out here to about 24, 36 hours or so. And you notice the GFS is fairly unenthusiastic with development. You can see a fairly broad wave right here, some cyclonic turning in the atmosphere as this approaches is slowing down and approaching the Texas coastline here. But you can see on the GFS this is fairly strung out, so this would be a broader area of convection, heavier rainfall for a larger area. And then you kind of roll that even forward to 48 hours. You see how it kind of comes in and then takes a little bit of a left turn right before landfall. That is fairly significant, because if that can slow down further, that might have a chance to have more time to strengthen. And we do think it's going to strengthen some, because these water temperatures in this region are fairly warm with high upper ocean heat content values. The biggest concern for me currently is going to be heavy rainfalls, some storm surge, and the flooding potential across this area. Again, where this is expected to come in and make landfall, pretty prone to storm surge, but also this is going to be slowing down. This is going to be a heavy rainfall threat, especially closer to where the center is. This is not necessarily a broad, sprawling out system like like a Tropical Storm Cristobal that came up here earlier in the year that brought impacts a couple hundred miles well to the east of the system and little impacts to the west. That's not going to be the case here. We have a fairly well-enveloped system that's going to intensify on the way in, possibly more so than what the National Hurricane Center is showing right now. Maybe, if I had to guess, maybe 50, 55 miles per hour right now. But again, the official National Hurricane Center forecast is calling for 45 right on the coast there by the next 60 hours. So certainly, if you live in Texas and Louisiana, now's the time to start paying attention to this. If you live in the areas under a tropical storm watch here across from near McAllen to Houston, Texas, now's the time to think, okay, what's your hurricane preparedness plans in case if this does intensify further? And more so than what we thought, you have to be ready for that possibility. So start thinking about your, medication, start thinking about, evacuation plans, start thinking about what you're going to do in the event with everything else going on right now, in the event that you do have to evacuate, where you're going to stay, so on and so forth. You know the deal. If you've watched these videos long enough, you know the deal. So we want you to be prepared. We want you to stay safe. That's the reason why I'm here. So if you live from near McAllen to Houston, Texas, now is the time to start thinking about what you're going to be doing in the event that this does become a hurricane under, circumstances that would favor that, okay? So that is that. Now, moving on to Tropical Storm Gonzalo. This is one of the more interesting systems. First of all, maximum sustained winds have increased to near 65 miles per hour and a pressure of 998 millibars. Hurricane watches have been issued for Barbados, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines today. Today being the St. Vincent and Grenadines under a hurricane watch now as of 8 o'clock this morning. This is expected to become a hurricane within the next 12 to 24 hours or so. However, there's some uncertainty for that, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute or so. After this eventually crosses Barbados, the St. Vincent and Grenadines, this could be stronger or weaker in through here. I would tend to lean towards a weaker solution, and we'll talk about why that is here in a minute. This could get close to the Dominican Republic and Hispaniola, and again, this could be a tropical storm or an open wave by this point, but the official National Hurricane Center forecast keeps this as a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm just south of Hispaniola in the Dominican Republic and to the south and east of Jamaica, which is sitting right here. So this is a fairly significant thing. Now let's take a look here at the visible satellite, and you notice some fairly drastic changes so far. First of all, we have a very disorganized system. We had a fairly well-established convective burst over the night last night, and then it kind of fell apart. Dry air has been one of the main problems, and you notice we've seen some convective activity now starting to pick up closer to the center of circulation today and this morning, but not really a well-established system. And you can even argue that this is an outflow boundary. These storms are connected to the outflow boundary, which is suggesting that we have a certain dry air problem, and we're going to likely see more dry air be of significant concern during the day today. If we take a look here at the IR satellite presentation, you notice what we had last night was this pretty good curved band that started to develop. If you run that all the way back, you had a fairly well-established curved band that was starting to develop with somewhat of a mid-level eye that was starting to develop. We had another convective burst, but this ultimately failed to rotate around. That has now since weakened, and we've seen more convection try to develop closer to the center, but ultimately the whole north side of this is lacking any convection. The southwestern side's lacking convection, the southern side's lacking convection, the northeast side's lacking convection. This whole area is fairly disheveled. Now, again, the Hurricane Center has issued hurricane watches, and the thing is that they do mention in their 8 o'clock intermittent advisory that this could become a hurricane by later today. It's not out of the question, but it's looking a little bit less likely that this will be maybe, let's say, 85 miles per hour within 36 hours or so. And that's when it really starts to impact land. Of course, you can see by 72 hours, this is still a hurricane. I would suspect this would be a tropical storm or depression, or maybe even an open wave by then. Again, it's fairly hard to say because these small storms are so fragile to sun, dry air entrainments. And we've seen that during the course of, last night and this morning, we've seen some dry air get enveloped. It's not significantly dry air, but it's dry enough that once it got trained into the core, it actually continued to weaken that. This is the Mesosector 1 view, but if we go back here to the IR presentation, you notice these convective towers that do go up, they quickly die out, and we've continued to see that. So this would indicate to me a fairly well-established dry air core, if anything, but this is probably going to end up weakening during the day today. Dry, stable air to the north. It's July 23rd, and I think, certainly if this doesn't become a hurricane and impact the islands, that's a good thing. Obviously the islands need rain, but they don't need a hurricane. And, if this doesn't become a hurricane, maybe opens up into a wave, before the islands or whatever, that would be great. But right now, the course of least regret for the islands, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad and Tobago even, need to be preparing for a system to come in by Saturday, morning or evening, as what could be a hurricane by then. That's why hurricane watches have been issued for Barbados, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. And even if you live down here in Trinidad and Tobago, you just need to stay aware of this, just in case if this does try to slide a little bit further to the south. But as it currently stands, this is expected to head right near Barbados and then over the St. Vincent and Grenadine Islands here over the next few days or so, before finally dissipating out here into what could be an open wave in the Caribbean. If you take a look here at the GFS forecast, this is for Tropical Storm Gonzalo. This is 12 hours out, about 18Z today. The model here is showing a 993 millibars, so it is deeper than what it is then. You see, currently it's 997, which is about where it's at, and you notice the dry air that's getting wrapped around from the south, and that very strong dry air push to the north associated with that trade and south surge. But you notice how, it still gets down to 987 on the GFS, becoming a hurricane then by tomorrow morning. Certainly enveloped a little bit more in the way of moisture across this area. So this is, from about 6Z this morning, but this does show an overall envelope of energy that, may try to bundle into a hurricane. And if we look here at the GFS wide shot here, this is from the 6E run. You notice this is valid as of 1 a.m. this morning. This is Gonzalo right down here, and you notice this big trade and Saharan air push that's occurring right now to the north of the system. We're also getting some of that wraparound dry air into the southwestern quadrants of the system. That's why we're not seeing it be as intense right now. If we shift this out about 24 hours or so, you notice now most of that trade surge is now to the northwest of the system. A little bit less dry air to the north and east of it, but we still have a fairly prominent area of dry air to the north, likely keeping this a very small system, because dry air to the north like this in a faster motion of about 20 to 30 knots down through here does not support and facilitate a much larger system. So that's one thing that's keeping it fairly small and in check right now. We also have this area that's kind of being wrapped around and entrained into the center of circulation that's helping to kind of keep this down. And you notice by the time it gets to the islands, the pressure is down to about 994 millibars, but it is now starting to undergo a weakening trend as it approaches the islands. All of that dry air now to the north and to the southwest of the system is getting entrained in. We have a fairly decent push of trade surge across this region, some upper level shear. So this does not facilitate significant strengthening on approach to the islands. And that's going to be one of the problems today, is that does this have enough energy now? Can this end up being strong enough to basically rebound during the day today and facilitate more strengthening later this evening? Now, according to the European forecast model, which has not really been picking up on Tropical Storm Gonzalo fairly well, it does show this becoming just a fairly open wave, kind of coming into Trinidad and Tobago. Not really anything to worry about on the European, but again, given that this is not resolving the circulation very well and is kind of playing catch up with the overall envelope of energy, again, we'll just have to wait and see. But again, certainly the trends as of this morning are forecasting a weaker system into Trinidad, or into St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Barbados, north of Trinidad and Tobago. But again, a weaker system is going to slide a little bit further to the south near Trinidad and Tobago. So if you live down there, don't discount the system off yet. And conversely, if you live north of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Barbados, don't count the system off either, because again, these short-term fluctuations and intensity mean a lot, but again, as quick as it goes down, it can quickly come back up again and re-intensify during the diurnal maximum tonight. So we will have to wait and see. As it stands right now, this is the 6E model guidance intensity for Tropical Storm Gonzalo from Levi Cowan's tropicaltidbits.com. 60 knot, or about 55 knots right now, or 60 miles per hour forecast to become a hurricane by tonight. Most models indicate that, but you notice most now, or some of the models indicate either a weakening trend during today and a slow phase into this kind of open wave phase by hour 84 and 96. most models don't really kill this thing off drastically. And that's going to be one of the things, is that yes, this is weaker today probably, and will likely be downgraded a little bit at the 11 o'clock advisory, but this is likely not to dissipate off significantly on approach to the islands. This is probably not just going to be an open wave by the time it gets to the islands. This reminds me a lot of Dorian, in a sense that we had this fairly facilitated area of convection that tried to develop near the center. It's weakening, dry air, and then it strengthens on approach near to the islands. If we take a look at one of the reasons why this is likely not to just become an open wave real quickly, this is the 9Z this morning 850 millibar relative vorticity product. And again, these reds and whites are your higher vorticity in the atmosphere at 5,000 feet. And you notice where Tropical Storm Gonzalo is right now, we have a fairly well-rounded little vortex right now showing up nicely on the vorticity product. And again, this is one of the things that's kind of keeping this thing intact. We still do have a little bit of moisture that's trying to envelope this. And again, the shear is not exactly going to be really strong, at least for probably the next about 24 to 36 hours or so before shears really starts to increase across this area. So that's going to be one of the things that's really facilitating that. And real quickly, if we take a look here at the water vapor satellite imagery, again, you notice all of this dry air to the north that's kind of being entrained into the system. We also have some fairly dry air to the southwest, as we're getting a little bit of southwest to northeast shear that's being impinged on the system. Not a lot, but it is enough to kind of move this area of drier air and kind of slam it into the center of circulation. That's causing this area to become fairly well mixed in with dry air and not really allowing this to facilitate deep convection for long. So we do have a lot to kind of keep track of. Again, Tropical Storm Gonzalo is still expected to be a hurricane by tonight or tomorrow as it moves closer to St. Vincent, the Grenadines, the leewards, windwards, and Barbados. So we have a lot to talk about. And once again, we do have Tropical Depression 8, which will likely be Tropical Storm Hannah over the next few days, which could impact Texas as a weak to moderate tropical storm right now. And then Major Hurricane Douglas, which is expected to become remain a major hurricane and become a threat to the landmass of Hawaii. So we have a lot to watch here over the next few days. This is the first of 2 video updates. I will have another one at my regular time here at about 3 o'clock Eastern time. Hope you all have a great rest of your morning and early afternoon, and I'll see you guys back here then at 3 p.m. Eastern.